Alright guys, so if you didn't hear, I ended up deciding against waiting until I was 11 of 11 Mythic and doing all the bosses in one video. This is going to be 9 of 11 Mythic, and then the last 2 will come in a separate video once I'm more comfortable with those fights and able to be giving tips on them. I have not actually killed Argus yet as of recording this video. But anyways, if you're new here, this video is basically going to be going over every fight in order and giving tips and tricks for Elemental Shaman specifically, not like a strategy guide, more of a talents, legendaries, and general damage improvement tips for LE Shaman, so if that's what you're looking for, then stay tuned. First thing first is Garothi Worldbreaker. There's not a whole lot to discuss here, but basic talent suggestions would be Ascendance or Ice Fury Gambling build if you can, otherwise just Ascendance build. Keep in mind the travel time to get to the boss is actually longer than the global cooldown, so Ice Fury build can be really annoying to try and min-max. You can still play it, but it's going to be a little frustrating, so you may want to just go with Ascendance. Also, you can use Gust of Wind for a lot of things on this fight, like during the part where it sucks you in, you can get a cast off, and you can turn around and gust backwards and almost always be fine. And during the empowered annihilation soaks, you can get knocked back, and then gust back into the same soak or gust to a new soak, so keep that in mind as well. For Felhounds of Sargeras, this fight can be a little chaotic, but I would definitely suggest going Ice Fury if you're at all capable of doing so. If you're not at all comfortable with Ice Fury, then you'll probably see better results with Ascendance, but if you're at all able to Ice Fury, even if you're not min-maxing or anything, even if you're just doing basic get the charges out in time with 20 Maelstrom gameplay, Ice Fury is probably still going to be better because there is a lot of movement and stutter stepping on this fight. And on the topic of stutter stepping, my biggest tip for this fight gameplay-wise would definitely be when you're on the Fire Dog and you're doing the Siphon movement, you actually do have time to cast one spell in between each movement. You just move to the new location, cast a spell, Ghost Wolf, and run to the next location. Or if everyone's actually moving together, you don't even have to Ghost Wolf, and then you can cast a Frost Shock or something while you're moving. Some sort of instant cast if you have them available. And the only other thing I can really tell you is every time you're within 40 yards of both dogs, definitely try and keep a Flame Shock on both. And otherwise, just try not to die because there is a lot going on. Next up is in Tauren High Command. On this fight, I would definitely recommend the Lightning Rod Liquid Magma Totem build with either Aftershock or Ancestral Swiftness. On the legendaries, I would definitely go with Sephuz, plus you can go with Soul. That being Soul the Farseer, you can go with Gloves, you can go with Eye of the Twisting Nether. But I do want to address the risks are something that I would probably avoid, unless your guild is just doing very little damage to the adds, because it's kind of more just like a, if the adds are close enough, it can be worth it, but generally the adds are jumping out of melee constantly, and you're not actually getting that much Chain Lightning damage outside of when they first spawn, so I really think risks are quite overrated on this fight. But if you find that you're doing a ton of damage with Chain Lightning alone, then you may want to consider trying it. Also, in my heroic video, I mentioned proccing Sephuz with interrupts. Well, someone commented on that video and said to use Earth Grab Totem, and turns out that actually works. You can't stun the adds, so you may as well go Earth Grab Totem. You can drop it before they even spawn, and it'll root them as soon as they spawn, and proc your Sephuz. It has a 30-second cooldown, so it lines up perfectly. Just be careful not to root them as soon as they start Bladestorming out, because if you hit them right as they start leaving, they will stop in melee and Bladestorm in melee. As much as that benefits your Chain Lightning, you might kill some melee. Also, if you have to do a pod, definitely the best pod for an LE Shaman is the 3rd pod, because there are no adds spawning during that pod. So if you can try to convince that to your raid leader, because you're probably one of the biggest ad DPS, do what you can do. Next up we got Portal Keeper, Hazabel, and on Portal Keeper I also suggest the Lightning Rod Liquid Magma Totem build. You can alternate Stormkeeper and Liquid Magma Totem on the imps. Legendary suggestion, Sephuz with Soul the Farseer, Gloves, and if you really need imp damage, Wrist can be very good for bursting down the imps. If your comp is not very good for imp damage, I would definitely try the Wrist. Otherwise, I think that overall damage it probably will suffer, especially if you have other people in the group who are doing a lot of imp damage. If you can at all avoid it, do not go up in the portals, because LE Shaman is not that great at quick single target damage, especially with a bit of a ramp up and your spec for AoE, and you're excellent on the imps. You have Earthquake knockdowns, you have a 12-second interrupt, ranged interrupt that is, you have a 45-second AoE stun. You can do a lot to those imps, so definitely try to convince your raid leader to let you stay down, because up in portals is just wasting your capabilities. And then, also, when the imp is spawning, or when the portals are spawning, you can go ahead and drop your liquid magma totem and your earthquake on the portal spawn, and just get some momentum going before they actually come out, because you're going to be wasting globals on that when you could be chain lightning. Eonar is a pretty rough trash pack, so I'm going to go ahead and go over that as well. So for Eonar, I would definitely suggest avoiding just trying to pad, because in the end, the single target on Eonar is what actually matters. What you want to be doing is your best to funnel your AoE damage into single target, and then get a lightning rod up on the Annihilator, and then pop SK and chain lightning all the little adds or something like that. For talents, you could just go lightning rod, liquid magma totem again. I would probably avoid going Aftershock because things are moving constantly, so you're not going to get a whole lot of value out of it. Also, you don't have a whole lot of uptime either. And you also could consider going Echo, but I couldn't really figure out a proper combo that really benefited you that much going Echo, because you're constantly having the ad spawns separate. So having that 1 minute cooldown was actually more beneficial than the consistent damage, especially when you're constantly casting Chain Lightning. My legendary suggestion is just Sefu's plus whatever you feel is working best for you. I personally went between like Sefu's and either Twisting Nether and Soul of the Farseer. I would go against the gloves, because if you get the proc, you're often going to end up wasting it. So probably some Sefu's and either Twisting Nether or Soul of the Farseer or something along those lines. Also, if you're a huge tryhard nerd, you can bring Avalanche Potions to jump down to the other platforms faster, like me. So Imonar is kind of a rough boss, but in general I would definitely suggest against using Ice Fury, because the large movement phase is not something you can actually hit the boss during, so you want to have the longer cooldown that will constantly be coming back up as you're moving across the bridge. That will definitely be the better option there. You can also consider running like Storm Elemental and maybe even Primal Elementalist because of all the downtime, if you feel that it will line up well with the amount of DPS your raid is doing. Like if it's up for the platform and then when you're coming across it's on cooldown, that could actually work out really well. Additionally, I originally did not succeed in jumping over things with Gust of Wind, like on PTR and stuff, so I just kind of assumed it wasn't possible. But recently in LFR I tried it again, and I went right over the mines and didn't take any damage to them, so I don't really know what you can and cannot jump over. You probably want to avoid attempting to jump over anything because the tank should be clearing the way anyway. But I do believe at the very least you can jump over the green mines, not the ones that stun you, but the damage ones, if you really, really need to. Otherwise, there isn't a whole lot you can really do in this fight other than just sit there and do your best to do single target damage. So Kingaroth is, in my opinion, a very interesting and fun fight, but unfortunately Ellie kind of sucks on it. But if you find yourself in the situation when you're actually allowed to come in on it, I would definitely suggest going Ice Fury if you're at all capable of doing so, because Ascendance doesn't line up very well with the adds, and this fight is all about doing add damage. And if you aren't aware of how the adds work, basically when they first spawn, they take... well, the entire time they're spawning, they have a vulnerability window, and the vulnerability window starts a lot higher than it ends up being. Like, it starts at like 100% and then slowly goes down. Or quickly goes down, actually. So you want to do a lot of damage in the first few globals. Ice Fury is good for this because it has a big cast and you can do a couple Frost Shocks or whatever. In terms of timing, at the beginning you have about 40 seconds until the ad spawns. So you can go ahead and use Ice Fury and Fire Elemental, but you cannot use SK. From then on, after the ad spawn, they will take exactly 2 minutes to spawn again, every time. So you can use Stormkeeper shortly before the first one spawns, like just before, like during the cast to go invulnerable or whatever, and then you can use it on cooldown from there, and then you can have it up for every ad set and you get as many uses out of it as possible. Just due to the cast time on Ice Fury, it's not always going to line up well with the ads, because 30 seconds goes into 2 minutes and you're casting it for 2 seconds each spawn. So it's not always going to add, or not always going to line up, so you may have to save it at some point. Keep an eye on the timers. If it has less than 30 seconds left, you don't want to use it. Also, you do want to make sure you're pooling Maelstrom going into the ad phase, so you can have your very first global be an Earthshock every time. If this Earthshock crits and overloads and boots proc or whatever, you can do crazy damage to the ad, but otherwise you're going to tickle it, because you're an Ellie Shaman. The cast sequence I did personally was Earthshock into Elemental Blast into Ice Fury, and then kind of whatever I could do from there. Generally the Stormkeeper Lightning Bolts or whatever, and then Frost Shock dumping, stuff like that. Also, if you find that the ads are often getting out of their starting area and getting to the boss, and the boss is no longer immune and all that, you can consider the shoulder build, the shoulder boots build. It's basically Gimling build, but with shoulders instead of gloves. And you could put the Earthquake down on top of the ad and hit Kingaroth with it as well. And quick tip, if you're using this build, you want to Earthshock at 85 Maelstrom instead of 70. So Varimathras is actually not at all the fight that a lot of people think it is. It is all about killing the ads. The single target damage does not really matter, it's all about the quick burst on the ads, and Ellie is actually really good at this. So my suggestion for this would be Ascendance. That's what I preferred because it made it a lot easier to ensure that you have a high amount of Maelstrom going into each ad spawn. Ice Fury can be used, but I didn't personally prefer that one. I liked Ascendance a little more. Additionally, you definitely want a macro to instantly target the ad as soon as it spawns when you try to Earthshock it. I'll link a macro like that in the description if you want to use that one. And one huge thing that a lot of people don't seem to be doing for some reason is go Windrush Totem, because during the slow phase it helps tremendously to get the Necrotic Embraces out properly during the slow phase. And not only do you not really want or need Gust of Wind on this fight, but using it at all would probably get you killed and wipe the raid. So you don't want Gust of Wind in general, may as well just go Windrush Totem and help out the raid. What you can do on Coven of Shivara heavily depends on how your tanks are doing things. Basically, you can cleave really hard and do a lot of damage if the tanks are keeping the bosses close enough to do so, but if they're not, then you're going to be doing very little damage. But either way, I would definitely suggest going Ascendance on this fight because you're doing a lot of multi-dotting. And also, you have about 20 seconds on pull to use Stormkeeper, somewhere between 15 and 20 seconds. And then after that, you want to use it sometime in the first 15 to 20 seconds, and then the Fire Ads are going to spawn 1 minute after that, and you definitely want Stormkeeper for the Fire Ads, because almost no matter how the bosses are positioned, you can get at least 3 targets with your Chain Lightning, sometimes up to 5, because you can chain from a Fire Ad to the boss, to the Fire Ad, to another boss, to another Fire Ad, and completely destroy them. The one downside to this is that you are destroying the melee ones, which would probably die anyway, but you can do that and then dump the Earth Shocks and do a ranged one or something if you really want to be the hero. Also, if the bosses are being tanked properly, that being close together, I definitely think that the Shoulders Boots build is actually superior on this fight, because you are going to be able to cleave with the Earthquake by putting it right in the middle of the bosses, and you can do tons of boss damage. In this fight, boss damage actually does matter quite a bit, because after the second Fire Ad, you tend to just skip the rest of the ads and not kill them. So you kill the first Fire Ads, then the next 3 sets, and then you kill the second Fire Ads, and then you just kind of kill the boss. And if you don't have enough boss damage, you will end up dying to the second set of healing ads. Alright guys, that is it for this video. Like I said earlier, I'll be doing the next 2 bosses in a separate video, but I wanted to get this out sooner than later because I just haven't really been motivated and just wanted to do it, I guess. And I didn't want to make you guys wait until after Argus kill, or 2 kills, or however long it takes me to like accumulate some tips for that to get all the earlier bosses, so here you go. Next 2 coming whenever they come. I don't know, it depends on how many times I kill it in a short period of time or whatever. Anyways guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you liked it. Like if you want to see more or whatever. Or like if you like the video, subscribe if you want to see more. And I'll see you guys next time.